to sell their house with a 30-year mortgage on it with a rate of 2 to 3%.
And so that's been one of the ironies of this whole thing, right? The home builders are doing well because they can build a new house that someone has to move in because there is a supply shortage because of this weird phenomenon about mortgages.
Well, and then there's the question about financial engineering, where people are going to basically just pass along those mortgages. I don't know. Taking a step back, I just wonder how much this is normal, right? That you get it washed out in banks, and how much is different? How much is this something that is a unique distortion?
I have no idea what normal is anymore. What's normal?
We don't know what normal is.
We've had a distortion for like the last 10, 15 years.
This was a calculus exercise. The first and second derivative of the rate change, and Peter was way out front on this, was truly historic. If you get yields coming back in a Steve Major way, in an Ed Hyman way, in a David Rosenberg way, does this self-adjust price up, yield down? No one's looking for that. No one's looking. You talk 2 to 3% mortgages. What if you get back to a 3.6% mortgage?
And I would just add the one thing, right? We never experienced these large-scale asset purchases or QE until 2008. I don't think we have any idea how those really affect asset prices or not. So I think people like to try and convert, how much QE is or QT is a basis point. I don't think we have any idea, and I think QE and QT go much more directly to asset prices.
Right.
You keep looking at the Fed balance sheet and the stock market.
Steve Rasciuto's heated about this at Mizuno.
Steve's
He says,
great.
just stop it now.
You know what normal is? It's when you entered the industry on Wall Street, whatever date that was.
Exactly. That's true.
What you
Very
believe.
true.
That's what you believe.
Can I
Or
say-
when you first got your mortgage. I was speaking to someone at the airport the other day.
Totally.
And he was,
John-
let me tell you about the 80s. just like what I had to pay a month. It's always the same.
Can I
It's
say
always the same.
thank you?
Sure, of
I
course.
had no idea about snakes and ladders.
Oh,
I
didn't you?
had no idea.
Oh, there you go,
No
yeah.
idea.
It
So
makes
shoes
no
and ladders.
sense.
It's history. It goes back to the India, the Raj, all that.
Did they slide down snakes back then?
No, but they're scary, and that's why they changed the shoots in America
Shoots
in
and that's too scary for the kids.
1943.
They make them soft here.
You know,
what's happening.
Pharaoh shows
happening.
up. I learned something
These
every
kids,
single
they're
Friday.
going soft.
Also, the Bravo
Hey, you know
boys over
what?
to
You
the
were
Farrah
here 2 days
household.
this week. You should come in.
This is what Governor Youngkin was talking about.
Oh my gosh.
This is what he was talking about.
Shoots and ladders?
Hey, you know what's happening in education these days? Should we
Shoots and ladders. Stick some snakes on them.
That's a conversation for another time. Peter Chair of Academy Securities. Thank you, sir. Equity markets positive 0.4%. This is Bloomberg.
Keeping you up to date with news from around the world. With the first word, I'm Lisa Mateo. President Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy postponed their meeting on the debt limit that was set for today. And that delay signals that progress has been made in talks between staffers aimed at averting a catastrophic U.S. default. McCarthy says the president will meet with him and other congressional leaders next week. House Republicans have passed a symbolic border security package. The legislation would ensure fewer people could claim asylum in the U.S. and lock more migrants in detention facilities. It has no chance of passing the Democratic-controlled Senate. The bill's passage came on the same day that pandemic-era border restrictions ended, ensuring an increase in migrant arrivals. Twitter appears to be getting a new chief executive. There are multiple reports that Elon Musk is in talks to hire the head of global advertising and partnerships at NBC Universal to be the social media platform's next CEO. Linda Yaccarino joined the company in 2011 after nearly 2 decades at Turner Broadcasting. Musk has said he'll become Twitter's chief technologist. I'm Lisa Mateo. This is Bloomberg.
season is here.
We haven't had a shocker yet.
They are minting money.
Markets are still volatile.
I think it's going to be choppy.
Bloomberg breaks the numbers first.
Quarter results impressive.
The revenue beat is amazing.
With exclusive expert analysis.
This is really important to watch.
Buy on the fear, sell on the news.
Where is the upside in this market?
Do we get answers to that today?
Bottom line speaks for itself, and that's what moves markets.
Bloomberg Television and Radio. The fastest numbers and analysis you trust.
The only good outcome is one in which Congress acts. What global markets and American households and businesses need to see is that we have a Congress that's committed to paying the bills. If Congress fails to do that, it really impairs our credit rating. We have to default on some obligation. That's something America hasn't done since 1789, and we shouldn't start now.
We'd have to default on some obligation with very little transparency on what that obligation might be. Janet Yellen, the US Treasury Secretary, speaking to AMH in Japan at the G7 meetings, live from New York City this morning. Welcome to the program and good morning. Your equity market positive 0.4% on the S&P 500. The lift to close out the week. Let's see if this sticks going into the weekend. Futures positive, yields higher by 3 basis points, 341 96 on the 10-year top. Has there been a discussion between the President of the United States and his Treasury Secretary about which obligation that might be? What is the hierarchy? What are the contingency plans they've got in place?
To the conversation last hour, John, I think you're dead on. We don't really know the process between the Secretary of Treasury and this president. I'm really unclear on the back and forth and how it works, given all the other advisors in the White House. With Ron Klain, it was easy. Ron Klain ran things. But right now, I'm really not sure.
They are clearly unwilling to be fully transparent about this. For negotiation purposes, from my standpoint, this is why they don't want to talk about so-called hypotheticals. It would be ridiculous to me, just the idea that you don't have a Treasury Secretary and a President that have had this discussion, Lisa. I can't get my head around that. That would be irresponsible as a policymaker not to have these contingency plans in place, or at least not to be having these discussions weeks away from what you believe might be the X date.
I'm sure they are. If they're considering using the 14th Amendment of the Constitution to potentially just keep on paying and keep on going, they are having these discussions. They are making these contingency plans. They don't want to talk about them, though, and that's we're going to basically have to be used to that. The political theater that happens outside, and then the real talks that happen in the room.
A brief on site and into the weekend with us, Anne Marie Horton, our Bloomberg Washington correspondent in Nagata, Japan. This is on the west coast of Japan, away from Tokyo, but with a focused G7 finance ministers meeting. What I'm absolutely fascinated about, Anne Marie, is we have a Secretary of Treasury exceptionally experienced in economics and labor dynamics. She basically invented the word slack within the modern economic jargon. We also have a president with years and years of legislative experience. That's a powerful combo. How will President Biden and Janet Yellen, when you get back to Washington, how will they move this process given all their experience?
Well, we know from Secretary Yellen what she spoke to me about here at the G7 is that when she gets back, she will meet with banking executives. What was interesting is that recently she only spoke to business leaders in different sectors of the American economy. She hasn't spoken to banking executives about the debt ceiling since she first put out that letter in January, and she wants to learn from them about their angst. Obviously, we know Jamie Dimon yesterday told Francine Lacroix that he has set up a war room. And then you have the President of the United States, who was only going to be there for half the week, because then he's coming here in Japan to meet with leaders at Hiroshima for the G7 ministerial meeting. So the negotiations right now on the political front are happening with his staff and the legislative staff of Speaker McCarthy. That is really who is going to be able to hammer out this deal. And that's why likely part of the reason this meeting today, it was supposed to be today, is postponed. They think they are making some progress on the staff level before they sit down with all the principals. But as you said, Biden really likes to tout himself as this epic deal maker. Spent years in the